Thanks very much, Christine. Tēnā koutou katoa, and thanks for joining us. Before I begin my presentation today, I want to acknowledge the many contributors over the years who have made the Garden Bird Survey possible, starting with Eric Spur, who founded the survey in 2007, and also Katrina McLeod, who coordinated the survey for the past 6 years and developed the integrated research program that it has become. We have also drawn on the Manaki Whenua informatics team's skills to develop the online form that allows us to collect the data, and our team of modelers who have developed the rigorous statistical analysis that will allow me to present the State of Garden Birds results to you today. The Garden Bird Survey really embodies a citizen science program where we bring together people and biodiversity research. We've developed a useful long-term biodiversity data set for both urban and rural areas, which is key because prior to recent years, we haven't had much urban biodiversity information available from across New Zealand. But we've also engaged New Zealanders across the country to help build this data set with us and to engage with nature and learn about the birds found in their back gardens. We've produced various resources, such as identification guides, to help every New Zealander participate, as well as fun activities for kids of all ages to engage with this program. Since 2007, we've received well over 50,000 surveys from across the country, and over 39,000 of those have come from gardens. Those are the results that we present each year in the State of Garden Birds report. This data set represents all regions of New Zealand and 97% of our territorial authorities. And overall, we've received surveys from 1.4% of New Zealand gardens. Each year, that coverage ranges from about 0.09 to 0.28% of all gardens in New Zealand. And some of those gardens are surveyed almost every year. The returns do differ across regions, however, so there are a few places we'd certainly like to see more surveys done, such as Southland, Gisborne, and the Bay of Plenty. Otago and Dunedin do tend to have the greatest proportion of returns compared to the number of households present there, and all our urban centers tend to return the greatest absolute number of surveys, so over 500 people in Auckland and Christchurch each have returned surveys in some years. Since the Garden Bird Survey is now over 10 years old, we've structured our reporting to be standardized each year to provide both 10-year and 5-year trends, so each year's results can be more easily compared to the previous year's trends. The results I'll be presenting today come from this time span, 2009 to 2019. We've used a sophisticated statistical analysis to present data from the Garden Bird Survey, using the metric of percent change in bird counts so that we can understand trends in common species over time. We report on trends in 9 introduced and 5 native species commonly found throughout New Zealand to give a picture of a variety of types of birds, including multiple trophic gills. We present trends over 10 and 5-year periods, as I said, and we estimate both the direction of those trends, so increasing or decreasing, and the size of the percent change, which ranges from rapid to shallow. These are converted into easy to understand alert levels based on certain thresholds. So here I show an example of the thresholds used for 10-year trends, where a decline of 50% or more would be a rapid decline, and a decline of 10% to 25% would be a shallow decline. In this modeling, we've accounted for the number of gardens in each region, territorial authority, and urban-rural area. We've accounted for urban or rural setting of those gardens, whether birds are fed or not in each garden, and for the repeated measure of some gardens over time. The modeling also involves a bootstrapping technique, so we can estimate the confidence we have in each trend, so we can actually say whether there is strong or weak evidence for a trend at a particular spatial scale. So here's a look at the national picture. You can see that on the left is the 10-year trend and on the right is the 5-year trend. At the bottom, you see that the number of surveys in the 10-year trend is 35,786, and the 5-year trend uses data from 19,912 surveys. So we have, in order of most increasing to greatest decreasing trend, all 14 of the common species that we report on. And what you can see are some exciting results of increases in native species over the last 10 years, such as keraru, fantail, and tui, with weak evidence for increasing bellbird populations. What we also see is that in the last 5 years, there are some accelerating increases, particularly for kereru at the national scale. There are also some declining trends showing at the national scale, particularly in several introduced bird species. And these might actually indicate that there's something important going on in the environment that maybe needs some looking into. But this national picture is not the only result that we can produce with the Garden Bird Survey. We also report on regional trends for each species, and here I'm showing tui as an example. Again, we have the 10-year trend on the left, the 5-year trend on the right, and the national trend is shown in the colored circle for each of those temporal scales. So we see that even though tui are showing a shallow increase nationally, within some regions they're actually increasing to a greater degree, particularly in Canterbury, both 10 and 5 years, but also in Marlborough over the past 5 years. So regional trends can actually be different than the national trends. Here I'm showing examples of regional trends for the silvereye as well, because a couple years ago there was quite a bit of media hubbub around the declines in silvereye that were being reported by the Garden Bird Survey. So what we've seen, again, is that at the national level, there is still the 10-year decline, and decline over 10 years, and that is actually a bit more rapid in Otago and Southland compared to the rest of the country. However, that decline is being reduced in the last 5 years, and actually in the North Island, silvereye seem to be increasing in some regions. So this indicates it's definitely important to continue doing the Garden Bird Survey to see whether declining trends might actually reverse for certain species, as well as to provide an alert for when other species might start declining, which haven't been in the past. With the Garden Bird Survey, we can also present trends within each region, either by territorial authority, as I'm showing here, or by urban-rural area. Here I've provided a couple of examples for Wellington and Canterbury, again with the silvereye, just to show some of the examples of these trends. So on the left, we have Canterbury, and the left part of that is the 10-year trend, and it shows both the regional and national trend in the colored circles. And then on the right part of the Canterbury graphic is the last 5 years, again with those regional and national trends shown with the colored circles on the outside. So you can see that even within each region, there are different trends for the species within the different territorial authorities. And for the most part, in Canterbury, those are declining trends. But within Wellington, we actually are seeing increases in certain parts of the Greater Wellington region, which is quite promising. I'd also like to emphasize that all of these maps for all regions, all spatial scales, are available on the Manaki Whenua Data Store website, which we'll send out a link to in the follow-up email for this webinar. And now I'll pass on to Graydon.
Thanks, Angela. Over the last 6 years, Katrina McLeod led the creation of resources to engage people in the Garden Bird Survey. She also implemented monitoring to evaluate how and why people participate. This work included developing education resources for young people in schools, creating a Facebook community of practice with almost 5,000 members, and marketing and social media strategies. Through the monitoring, we've seen the Garden Bird Survey attract an increasing number and wider range of people, particularly in the under 18-year-old age group from the major urban centres of Auckland, Wellington, Canterbury, and Otago. In terms of motivations, there are 3 key themes, and the quotes on this slide illustrate these. Firstly, lots of people just love birds. So they're fun and interesting to watch, and particularly for younger people, birds and animals provide an authentic gateway to connect with nature. Reflecting this, participants described how doing the survey had also prompted curiosity about nature and their local environment, including things like predator control, native plants, the role of pollinators, and more broadly, landscape restoration. Secondly, people told us that doing the Garden Bird Survey is easy and enjoyable and enables them to contribute to a collective and meaningful activity. Over 75% of participants follow the results of the Garden Bird Survey, and many told us how they really value what the data shows about the health of their local environments. Some noted how it is important, especially when there is so much bad news about biodiversity in New Zealand. Thirdly, lots of people told us about the personal well-being benefits of doing the Garden Bird Survey. So how it helped them to relax, slow down and observe nature, and that it was a restful and rejuvenating experience. Some people even told us about how they are incorporating bird watching into their daily life as a kind of mindfulness or relaxation practice. So overall, these findings show that the Garden Bird Survey is an effective citizen science tool, and interestingly, is creating more than just a biodiversity dataset. It's prompting people to change their daily practices and interactions with nature, and prompting wider awareness and understanding of environmental concerns. In upcoming research, we're going to be exploring these impacts and outcomes further. We're partnering with Department of Conservation and Our Place Porirua, which is a community-led project empowering young people to connect with, restore, and protect Te Taio in Porirua. The goal of the research is to better understand how the New Zealand Garden Bird Survey can be used as part of a place-based restoration project to create positive environmental and social outcomes. So I'll now pass to Nicolette, who's going to talk about how you can get involved. Thanks. For me, and I'll pass you over to Nicolette.
Thanks, Angela and Graydon, for your background on the story so far for the New Zealand Garden Bird Survey. I'm looking forward to this year's survey, which starts this Saturday. So we have a video that's going to pop up on our screens shortly when it's ready. It's just loading. We created this video with the help of some of our local citizen scientists. We had a couple of presenters help, as well as a filming company called Resonate, who were able to film this video actually during lockdown in the early days, which definitely had its challenges, filming from their own phones and the video equipment that they had. The bird footage was filmed basically with content from their own gardens and crowdsourced from their friends. So it's quite a great story of how something came together during this time. So is the video playing?
Did you know that by just sitting in your garden for an hour, you can help New Zealand scientists?
All you have to do is let us know which birds you see or hear in your backyard.
The Garden Bird Survey is Aotearoa's longest running citizen science project. You can help contribute to over a decade's worth of research.
Birds reflect the state of our landscape, our whenua, and kaitiakitanga. The more birds there are, the healthier our environment.
So for 1 week every year, we count all the garden birds in New Zealand. All it takes is 60 minutes.
So rug up warmly, grab your kids, grab your auntie, grab your nan's friend from next door, and head out into your garden, to your school, to your local park, and let's make New Zealand's birds count.
Because our land is our future. Tō tātou whenua moa popo.
And fast forwarding to today, we have a wide number of supporters who have contributed. So thank you. I'm really impressed by your level of engagement and interest in helping expose the survey this year to as many New Zealanders as possible. Our supporters have spread the word about New Zealand's this year's survey with their own communities and newsletters, social media and magazines, and even putting up displays in their own workplaces. I've had messages from children interested in conservation taking lead and putting posters up in their schools and contacting me about this directly. Many teachers around the country will be running bird counts during class time as well, which is really great to see. Also, we have some of our supporters here. This slide features some of the media that we've been present in today as well, which is quite substantial this year. So thanks to the team that I work with for helping pull this all together. Also, a big thank you to our partners who are featured along the bottom. A special thanks to Top Flight Bird Food, who provided a lot of support this year, providing prizes to the survey participants and a competition prize in the Kiwi Gardener. DOC have provided a lot of support this year too, and also run the Toyota Kiwi Guardians program where kids can earn the Taua Manu medal for participating too. Taking part is easy. Select your garden, park or school, choose one day from June 27th to July 5th. Look and listen for birds for 1 hour, record the highest number of bird species you observe at one time, and submit your survey results online at New Zealand at the gardenbirdsurvey.landcareresearch.co.nz. The survey link will go live from the website homepage on the 27th of June. You can print out a tally sheet that we have made for you to help count the birds. Make your own by simply writing down a bird name with its highest bird count next to it, or enter the results directly into the survey form if your bird counting spot is internet connected, like some of us might be lucky these days. We have people practicing for this year's survey already. Where's the best bird counting spot? Can the kids identify the right birds? It's been a chance to get out into nature and away from our devices, as Graydon has talked about. So our birds are counting on you. Some organisations have made this part of their corporate wellbeing offering, encouraging rewards for survey participation like Manaaki Whenua has this year. Grandparents are taking the kids out for the day and doing the survey with them. Parents are doing the survey as a fun family weekend activity, even creating bird hides and bringing out their lucky socks to help. So what are you doing to help make the birds count this year? Hopefully you can get involved between the 27th of June, that's this Saturday, to 5th of July, and for 1 hour during one of these days, and encourage others to join as our nation's citizen scientists. So please help our manu count as an indicator of health for our nation's environment.
Kia ora, and thank you for that, Nicolette. I think this is a really good time to segue into some questions, and I'm delighted to see that there's some really great questions coming through. The first one is for you, Graydon. Why does 2018 have more surveys than other years? Do we know that?
Good question. I'd
It's
probably
okay
have to.
if we don't know.
I might be able to jump in there. In 2018, there was a concerted effort to launch a variety of new resources and videos in the campaign leading up to the Garden Bird Survey. I would have to go back to look at specifically what some of the specific ones were, but there was a particular effort in that regard, and so I think that may have been a key driver in the participation for that year. It also really is about, I think, how well the word is spread locally. For example, in Southland, I know there were almost triple the number of surveys submitted from gardens compared to other years. So really, please do spread the word and encourage everyone. Every single garden counts. Every single survey really matters to being able to determine our results at each spatial scale.
Thanks, Angela, and here's hoping that 2020 will be another bumper year. More data is always better, isn't it?
Yes.
Here's another question for you, Angela. Are the trends calibrated on a smaller scale anywhere in New Zealand? I think this question is, do we review the surveys for accuracy with other data?
We have not yet, to my knowledge, compared the trends that we see in the Garden Bird Survey to those from other types of data sets. There would have to be a careful comparison made there, of course, because the places that are being surveyed are potentially quite different. And
I think one key point though, and I'd have to look up the specific results on this, but there has been some work done in collaboration with the Science Communication Center at the University of Otago with folks on our Facebook group, I believe, and there have been some checks of how well people do identify different bird species, and I think that those results have been quite promising. So I think we can be quite confident, especially given the number of surveys that we see, and those trends that we do provide do use all of the data that are entered nationally, and they're weighted based on the number of gardens present and the number of gardens surveyed. So there is some rigor applied to those trends that we report based on the data that we do get. Yeah.
Thanks, Angela. That's great. Another one here for you. Do we know why the silvereye declined? Was it just one bad winter?
That is an excellent question, and I think that is something that would likely require a good bit more work. I don't think that just one winter would give us that indication, because we do use I think even those results were over about 10 years of data. So I don't think just one bad winter would be showing that kind of result, but it could be, for example, that if we have warmer winters on average over time, maybe birds aren't as likely to be in the gardens. It could depend on how food resources are spread in and out of gardens, for example. So there are a few different potential things there, but it would require a bit more investigation, yes.
You talked about when the survey is done. Bevan is keen to know why the survey is done in winter. Aren't birds more abundant in other seasons?
That is an excellent question, and that, I believe, is even one of the questions that is answered in our FAQ page on the Garden Bird Survey website. But I can say that it's actually quite common for surveys like this to happen in the winter. In North America, there's the Christmas bird count, which is similar, and of course Christmas there is in the winter. I think one key point for New Zealand, because we don't have as many migratory birds, which is a common reason for winter surveys to happen in other parts of the world, is that more birds will tend to be in gardens if food resources are more scarce outside. But you also might think if we do the survey outside of breeding seasons, then there isn't an issue with breeding plumage, for example, or juveniles. We have so there are lots of good reasons to have it in winter, and there are actually some excellent reasons that it would be great to do additional surveys. So I know Eric Spur's ideal would be to do a survey every season, but we aren't quite there yet. So at this point, we'll keep going with our excellent long-term data set, because we need to keep doing it at the same time of year to keep reporting on these particular trends.
And this is kind of a follow-up question, which you might have almost covered. Seasonal food sources in the garden can influence bird numbers and species. Are the survey results influenced by that?
That is an excellent question, and yes, that would be one thing that would definitely then depend on what kind of vegetation the garden has. For example, if there's flowering trees that could act, or other plants that could act as food sources, for example. We do collect data on whether people feed birds in their garden, so that's accounted for in the trends. We do also collect some data on the structure of the garden, whether it includes shrubs and trees, as well as lawn and vegetable garden. So we could look more into how structures of gardens do influence the actual bird counts that we see.
Right, and we've got time for one last question. And I think I'm going to go for there's a few questions here, and rest assured we will come back to you with responses to those questions. But following on that theme, have trends been related to any environmental drivers like weather, mast years, regional pest control, for instance?
So as of yet, we haven't taken the next step to relate trends to drivers such as that. We are quite keen to do that work in future, and I know many community groups in particular who do predator-free activities are quite keen to look at how sort of before and after trends for the areas that they are working in. So there's definitely scope, and we're keen to pursue that.
Great. It's always good to start on something that we're about to do or want to do, and or rather to finish on that. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Angela, Graydon and Nicolette for a great presentation. We will respond to further questions and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. That will be next week, and we're going to be talking about how understanding the past will help us make better conservation decisions for the future. And that's going right back into our past with our paleoecologists. So you've got a few days to work out how to spell that, or at least I've got a few hours to work out how to spell that before I send the invitation out to everybody on the list. I look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you very much. We're done for today. Thanks, Tiffany.